and happy Human Rights Awards Day. It's so wonderful to be here. Ani buju nanitema kus indejana kas no mea gunaway nishnabe kwe Batwana. My name is Debbie Eisen. I'm the elder in residence at the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center. I am a Anishinaabe Kwe, which means Native woman in Ojibwe. I have a 36-year military career with the Navy that brought me here to Mi'kmaq territory, and I'm so honored and so blessed to be living and working and playing and raising my grandchildren in this beautiful territory. So I'm so happy to be here this morning. But I wanted to share with you a little teaching, and then I'm going to provide an opening prayer to start our wonderful awards off in a great way. This is the Anishinaabe creation story, and I think it coincides with what we're doing today. So if you will indulge in me, I'd like to share it with you. In the beginning, there was a great black void, and in that void there was a spirit, the great mystery, who sent his thoughts out into the universe. When no response happened, those thoughts were called back, and the great mystery said, "Create light in the universe as you come back to me." All the stars were born, and from them the planets were formed. It is at this moment we had light and dark in the universe. The Anishinaabe people believe that we were all made of light and dark, and the physical and the spirit. It is said that the first man, Winabuzu, came down from the sky and was lowered, and the first thing he did was to travel across the land and began naming everything, all the plants, all the trees, all the animals, all the insects, all the fish, and all of the birds. The Anishinaabe elders tell us that this is where our naming ceremony came from, and this is also where our Anishinaabe language comes from. This is why all the animals have gathered around the first man and the first woman as a reminder of how our story is closely connected to all life on Mother Earth. The next thing first man is asked to do by the Creator is to travel to the fire keeper in the east and learn about the sacred fire and all its connections to the heart and to the universe, and in doing so, he meets the firekeeper's daughter, who we now know as the morning star. It is their sacred union that is the beginning of humanity here on Turtle Island. In the west is the first thunderbird, who is the co-creator and protector of the people, and helping them to remember that we all have gifts, and that we should always be humble and know that those gifts came from our ancestors. The fish reminds us of our close connection to the underworld, the spirit world, for the fish is the guardian or gatekeeper. The otter is the helper who brought the teachings of the four directions and knowledge of what we know today as the medicine wheel teachings. The moose represents the hoot beings and the teacher of the forest and the teacher of the children. The birds are reminders of spiritual connections to our hearts, our sacred fire, and to the universe. The rabbit is here to remember the trickster and that not everything can always go as planned. Last is the bear, a reminder that we are in changing times, of which our prophets predicted as the 7 fires prophecy. The prophets also gave us teachings about the 8th fire, a time we are now in. It is said that in this time our stories and ancient wisdom will come to the surface and be shared with the Western peoples, and a new beginning will happen, called the 8th fire. A new people will emerge, and it will become the beginning of the golden age. These are the people who are sharing their stories, good and bad, and are reminding and sharing with everyone the ways in which the Great Spirit had intended for us to live and to protect all life on Mother Earth. And so I say miigwech. I ask everyone to stand, and I'll provide an opening prayer, and I invite each and every one of you here to provide to prayer in your own way. Ani bushu nana temakus indejanakas no mayanganaway Anishinaabe Kwe Batwana. Creator, we thank you for this light that you've given us this morning and the sunshine to help ignite the fire in our bellies to move ahead with yet another day. And we thank you for the rain and the winds that have blown to help cleanse Mother Earth of her toxins. We ask, Creator, that you come into this room today with these men and women and surround us, each and every one of us, with love as we honor those who have done such hard work to protect human beings, and to protect Mother Earth. We pray, Creator, for our loved ones who are sick and need your help and strength and guidance in the days ahead, and for our loved ones who are preparing themselves for their final journey to you. We pray, Creator, that you welcome them with open arms. We say miigwech to the firefighters, the doctors, the nurses, the paramedics, the police officers who work tirelessly day in and day out, protecting our way of life here in Jabukduk. Keep them safe and free from harm. And lastly, Creator, for our veterans, those men and women who are far from home, protecting our way of life here on Turtle Island. Keep them safe and free from harm till they return back to Turtle Island and back to the loving arms of their family and their friends. Emset Nogama, Tahomigwich.
Gwe, Walaliok. Hello and thank you for joining us today as we celebrate human rights on the eve of International Human Rights Day. My name is Joe Fraser. I use the pronouns he and him. I'm the Director and CEO of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and it is my honor to welcome each of you joining us in person and online this morning. Wilalin, thank you, Elder Debbie Eisen, for your beautiful welcome this morning. Those gathered in person are in the Paul O'Regan Hall of the Halifax Central Library in Jabukduk, Halifax, which sits in the territory of Mi'kma'ki, the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people. While I wish I could be there in person, I am one of the thousands of Nova Scotians right now who have the flu. So I'm joining you from my home in an effort to contain the spread of illness. But we've come together to celebrate human rights, recognizing the immense contributions of the generations who've come before us, particularly generations of Mi'kmaq and African Nova Scotians and others of African descent, whose lives continue to be impacted by systemic and societal legacies of colonialism. I would like to thank the drummers from home who brought us together with the rhythm of their playing just now. Thank you to Khalifa Jallo Hamilton, Wayne Hamilton, Robert Leake, and Ayo Oladejabi. It's my pleasure to have Ayo as a colleague at the Human Rights Commission, where he leads the work of promoting and advancing human rights as the Director of Race Relations, Equity, and Inclusion. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues at the Commission and our commissioners, some of whom are joining the event in person today. I want to thank them for their extraordinary commitment to protecting and advancing human rights in Nova Scotia. Thank you for all that you do. Each year, we commemorate Human Rights Day with the presentation of Nova Scotia Human Rights Awards. Today, we turn our attention to those among us who are actively working toward the goal of making this province a more inclusive, more equitable, and more accessible place to live. Today, we draw our attention to the conveners, the creators of safe spaces, the amplifiers and disruptors, and the agents of change. This year, we've extended our program slightly to invite two speakers to join us and share remarks about the critical issue of systemic discrimination. We're going to dive right in and introduce our first speaker, Wyatt White. I've had the pleasure of knowing Wyatt for several years. He is the Associate Executive Director of the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. His career has spanned all aspects of First Nations community development, and he has worked with all levels of government in leadership roles, focusing on Indigenous affairs and education. I'd like to thank Wyatt for being here to share his wisdom on the issue of systemic discrimination within the field of education. Welcome, Wyatt.
probably doesn't need to be too close. Walalin for that introduction, and Walalin for the invitation to come and speak with you this morning. I will say it's a little bit daunting when you get asked to provide a keynote, and that keynote comes so early in the program, you haven't had a chance to hear all the amazing things, and then get some food in you, and then get everybody really relaxed and get to chat. So I'm really going to try and treat this more like an opportunity to share some thoughts that I've had over my now 45 years on the planet, and about 23 in some form of public service. And I will say, just to sort of start things off, it's kind of an immediate challenge. I'm one of the folks who worked really hard to try and ensure that schools across the province create and share their territorial acknowledgements. You know, we started doing that as a result of the outcomes of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And one of the easiest things I think that organizations and schools and individuals are doing is that territorial acknowledgement. So we've been doing that for a number of years, and I think we're sort of at a time in this phase of perhaps the eighth fire, as Debbie shared with us, that we now take that very next step of, so you're making that territorial acknowledgement. What is it that you're going to do as a result of that? And so my immediate challenge is, so you've acknowledged the traditional territory that you get to inhabit and be part of and connect with, but what does that say about your relationship with the land and the people around you? What is it leading towards? And I think that's this additional call to action that I would ask everybody who's present today, and certainly our listeners and folks online, to take on that challenge of adding this territorial acknowledgement allows me to. And then you choose that next action. For many, many people, it'll be an opportunity to learn and connect more with Indigenous cultures, history in our territory, with the Mi'kmaq language. There's a tremendous richness that exists here. And if your organization is still at that point of just wanting to acknowledge, perhaps an action is to say, this territorial acknowledgement signals to the rest of the world that we're ready to take a step. We're a little scared, we're kind of shy. But if that's the case, just ask. Reach out to any community member or ally of the community to say, what is it that we can do? We've been doing the acknowledgement at the beginning of our board meetings or our faculty meetings, our staff meetings, but we're ready to take the next step. So I would ask that you take that challenge back and think about it in a way that focuses on your next step and doing something. The other thing that sort of comes along with this role as keynote is there's usually, and I'm glad it was very brief, biography that gets shared. And that's also another area where you can exercise some practices in decolonization and maybe focus on some of the things that connect you with perhaps the audience or the place that you're doing your sharing or deliberations, whatever that is. And so, it's great that, folks have had a chance to hear a little bit about most of my professional career. And the decolonized part of my introduction or biography is to let you know that although I've lived here in Jabuktuk for most of the last 20 years, I'm originally from the Listigouge First Nation, which is up on the Gaspé region of Quebec, right across from Campbellton, New Brunswick, and along the shores of the Restigouche River. And I have had the great honor of growing up there and with two loving parents. My mother is Mi'kmaq from Listigouche. My father is non-Indigenous from Campbellton. And I sort of grew up in a very loving household that really valued the importance of family and connection and traditional knowledge that came from both sides of my family. And I didn't really realize the impact at a sort of a human right and certainly Indigenous right perspective until I became a little bit older and realized that, I grew up outside of the First Nation that I am from because the law said that I was not allowed to live in the community. My parents were married were married in 1977, and as a result of my parents' marriage and it being my mom being an Indigenous woman to a non-Indigenous man, she actually lost her status. So through that union, she would lose technically her Indigenous identity. And it wasn't for another, I think it was close to 8 years before the federal government sort of did its best at the time to reduce, I won't say eliminate, the discrimination as a result of the Indian Act by creating Bill C-31, which allowed women who were in that situation who would have lost their status to gain their status back. But it came with baggage, so that there were subsequent forms of discrimination that came from Bill C-31, and those continue to have impact today. So even though I had a very rich upbringing outside of my First Nation, there was a lot of things that I didn't really get a chance to connect with at a community level, simply because of the identity that my parents had, and that my mom was a status Indian, then she was not, and then she was, and by right I was and I was not, and I was again. And I've got an older brother who's a different chapter of this story. Same parents, but because he was born before my parents got married, in the eyes of the government, he was sort of untouchable because it would seem as though he was a full status Indian. And so his status didn't actually change throughout, all of this time. So anyway, that's the rich history that I get to share. And if you want to hear an alternative version of that experience, simply based on gender, have a chat with Naomi Metallic, who, as everyone knows, is at Dalhousie University. She and I are second cousins, but have a different upbringing because her father's Indigenous, her mother is not. So I'll let her share her version of that story. And just to say that, I'm connected. I try to stay as connected as I can with my home First Nation. But as I said, I've now lived in Halifax or Jibuktuk more than I've lived in my own community. So this morning I wanted to focus on some thoughts and observations, having had experience working in the education system around the discriminatory practices that exist in many, many cases to no individual's fault. It is the system that we have sort of grown up in. It's the system that society has molded and supported through leadership of individuals along the way. And so, the thoughts and observations I'm making are not directed at anyone or anything, any particular government. They're really just sort of my own observations gathered on things that I've heard others say, I've seen in the system, and I will happily provide acknowledgement to the folks I will quote. But really some important points that others have gained or have raised throughout the system. I had wanted to kind of focus on 4 key areas, and this very much is a sort of hopefully a responsive bit of information, and at any point, I'm not sure about the protocol for engaging with question and answer, but I will try to make this relatively brief so that if there are questions, feel free to maybe we'll have time at the end. But the 4 key areas I had wanted to touch on were values, standardization, policy, and power. Those 4 areas really, I believe, have been truly impactful in looking at the education system and how it has systemically discriminated against Indigenous people, and not exclusively to Indigenous people. It would be exclusively to anybody who would be seen different as kind of the standard learner that is designed, that our current education system is really designed for. I was doing a bit of research, and I found what I think is quite a strong definition for anti-Indigenous racism, and found it at the St. Francis Xavier University Human Rights and Equity webpage. I do have a bit of a connection with St. FX, so I'm glad to reach out to them as a resource. So the definition for anti-Indigenous racism is the ongoing race-based discrimination, negative stereotyping, and injustice experienced by Indigenous peoples within Canada. It includes ideas and practices that establish, maintain, and perpetuate power imbalances, systemic barriers, and inequitable outcomes that stem from the legacy of colonial practices and colonial policies and practices in Canada. Systemic anti-Indigenous racism is evident in discriminatory federal policies, such as the Indian Act and the residential school system. It is also manifest in the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in provincial and federal criminal justice and child welfare systems, as well as inequitable outcomes in education, well-being, and health. Individual lived experience of anti-Indigenous racism can be seen in the rise of acts of hostility and violence directed at Indigenous peoples. So I hope people can see there's a tremendous amount of similarity in the other forms of racism that does exist, and that this experience has been in place really since day one here in Canada, since newcomers started arriving. And when I do this sort of talk in a legal context, I would start with the doctrine of discovery, which gave Europeans who were out journeying across the world the right to claim a territory that had not previously been claimed by a European entity as their own. And they were given that right by God. And so that doctrine of discovery, which it's easy to find online and not talked about a whole lot, is actually the foundation of law in North America. It's not something that we get to sort of uncover unless you're an educator and you get to encourage children to take a look at the foundations and the lack of a level playing field when we think of all rights and dignities that all humans should have. So that first area I wanted to just touch base on values, right? Our entire structure is based on Eurocentric values. The idea that what was important in Europe would automatically become what's important here on Turtle Island or in now North America, certainly in Canada. And this idea of trade and commerce and growth of wealth and prestige as a form of power really was the driving force that brought the approaches that we now manage the territories with. That continues to play the pivotal role, right? It's about generating that strong economy at the cost of everything else. Within the education system, and the public education system is not an old one. It's not as if we've had this for centuries. Public education is probably not a whole lot more than a century or so old, and really designed to fit quite a narrow scope of individuals in the onset. The idea that young people would have to be removed from their home or their community and put in an institution where the power of education was taken from parents and families and guardians and caregivers and given to an individual who would be given the role of teacher, really was a huge split in the opportunity for what we now sort of refer to as land-based learning, but really is where everything prior to European contact, where all learning sort of took place. And so with that process of getting students in one room and the uniformity of having everybody learn from the one instructor in the class, I think there was a quick realization that individual would have to have some level of standardized training, and that's taken a long time to evolve. And we now get to a place where I think we feel quite strongly that there's still a lot of room for the training that educators get. But for the first 100 years, the training was so that the majority of students in your class would be able to leave the classroom and be ready to work in one of two settings, in a vocational setting or in a setting where you'd have to have an elevated level of literacy. And that really drove the system up until the one we have now. If you think back, you hear about organizations and folks with power over education to say, we're not going to tinker with it, we're really going to blow it up. And then 4 or 5 years later, you see, no, it's still the same rectangular box. Students are gathered by the same age. There are separate spaces for those who need more supports, but it's too much pressure to try and engage all students in a holistic way because we can't afford to have more than one teacher or more than one leader in the classroom because we've relegated all of that teaching role to the one person. That is slowly changing, but it is one of those systems that it is so deeply rooted in a Eurocentric model that, if we're trying to call it anything other than uncolonizing, is probably the closest thing we can say that the education system is trying to do. The idea of transforming it, that would really be sort of a tremendous practice in decolonizing education. Policies by nature are not designed to meet the needs of all learners. And so despite the very best wishes of leaders across the country to say, no, we will work tirelessly in order to develop the best possible policy to engage the most number of learners that support learning and growing in schools. A policy by nature, even the very best policies out there, I tend to use a lot of analogies, but I think of it's the size of shoe that is the most flexible, that will probably fit the most number of students, but won't work for everyone. It'll be pretty comfortable for a lot of people. It'll be kind of tight or kind of loose for a bunch of people around the fringe. And then there'll be children for whom the shoe just doesn't work. They may not have feet. They may not be able to walk, but this tool, the policy, is really meant to say, we can't go beyond the idea of supporting learning beyond a set of policies that guide that. And we'll spend as much time as we need to convince ourselves that an inclusive and engaged policy is the tool that makes the difference. So that policy as the lever, again, very much a Eurocentric construct that we want to believe is the fix for education, still very much rooted in this idea that one size can fit most. But certainly in today's context, most and all, those aren't the same things. And the last area that this sort of focuses on is how do Eurocentric values, the standardization of a system, the public school system that we have, the implementation of policies that in theory are meant to support things like learning and development for most, really all feed into the power structure that we have created. The power that governing bodies who have jurisdiction over education really hold over the ultimate success of the students in their system. When you think about how, in Canada, unless learning is exclusively under the jurisdiction of a First Nation or an Indigenous body or government, you are of the jurisdiction of the province. And if here in Nova Scotia, we have the great fortune of having both federal and provincial legislation that gives First Nations, 12 of the 13 here in Nova Scotia, gives them the right to govern education as they see fit in community. Now, thankfully here in our province, since those acts that came in the late 1990s, there's always been a desire to promote the concept of treaty relations. In the Mi'kmaq leadership at the time had said, we need to coexist. We need to have two systems that support each other, but certainly from an on-reserve perspective, the learning has to be rooted and centered in Mi'kmaq knowledge and tradition, values, culture, worldviews, and really guided by that work of traditional teachings. At the same time, they've said, but young people need to grow and flourish and step outside of community and engage in the rest of the world. So we need to model that on the predominant system that still exists in Nova Scotia, which is your classic P-12 public education model. So although there would be a tremendous desire to decolonize education from an Indigenous perspective and go back to a system of land-based learning that is rich and engaging, it creates too much of a chasm between the way people would live and learn on reserve and then how people would live and learn off reserve, because we're trying to focus on the relationship. It's not about what makes us distinct. It's really about how for the last 400 or so years we've figured out a way to coexist. And I think this eighth fire concept really speaks light to the fact that finally in 2015 and beyond, we have that introduction of the phrase, "We are all treaty people." And we are, whether you believe it or not. You are a treaty person. You've been your ancestors are signatories to a chain of treaties that still have deep implications in who we are as Nova Scotians. It's really finally the acknowledgement that not everybody has benefited equally from the treaties. And we have successive governments who are, admitting, yes, we need to get to a place of equity and understanding of what those treaties were meant to represent for people for generations to come, for 7 generations at the very least down the road. And I just wanted to conclude on some sharing that former Senator Murray Sinclair, who I think it was back in 2018, was part of the Belonging Series talks that Dalhousie hosted. And the lessons that he was sharing really after that session has truly impacted kind of my view of education, its role in forming individuals, not just really good students. So I'll just sort of read a piece that came from that talk and then maybe just reflect on the key questions that he asks in comparison to the ones that we're trying to promote through treaty education. Murray Sinclair discussed a fascinating paradox, that the greatest hope for a change in education, but at the same time, education is a primary tool for assimilation and continues to be. This is because children are still taught from a misguided and inaccurate perspective that a superior race of people settled and civilized this nation. And so he said, we need to change the way we think, talk, and act. Schools need to help students address 4 fundamental questions. Where do I come from? Where am I going? Who am I? And why am I here? If we don't address this fundamental assumption of racial and cultural superiority, along with all the negative stereotypes about Indigenous peoples that our children are exposed to in media and conversation, Sinclair said that we'll be having the same conversations for many more years. And that will mean Indigenous people will continue to feel they don't belong and will continue to be angry, and their communities will continue to suffer the same problems. So those 4 key questions that he poses, where do I come from, where am I going, who am I, and why am I here? To dig a little deeper in his context, he was imagining that if we had a public school system that when you were graduating from grade 12 and you were walking across that stage to receive your diploma and the handshakes from administrators, you would be able to confidently answer each of those 4 questions. That would be what your assessments would be based on. It's having an understanding of your ancestral history, who you are as a person, as a family or a clan, in a community or a culture. Where is that culture going, and having a sense of direction, having a sense that it's an upward trajectory or perhaps it's a downward one, and you're conscious of needing to change that. Who am I? Who am I as an individual? having that openness and confidence to allow the world to shape me, but still be able to create my own thoughts and share those confidently with the world. And why am I here? What's my purpose? For some people, they'll spend their whole life trying to find their purpose and meet their creator, perhaps not having had that fulfillment. Others will have gone their whole lives having that deep sense, an intense sense of purpose, that others have really helped shape and support their strength of character. And so, where we are now still is we have a system that is designed to have two main focal points, literacy and numeracy. And there's a new sort of sense, certainly as students age, and I applaud my former employer, the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development, who, for an upper junior high sort of transition course, an idea of creating an engaging citizenship course, which is, I believe, at grade 9 still. That course would allow students to start thinking about their position here as a Nova Scotian, as a Canadian, as a global citizen, and really start thinking about their place in that. That's a lot of pressure for one course, and they only get it at grade 9. So what about, grades primary to 8, and having that sense of richness to get to those questions that Murray Sinclair has posed. And the optimism I sort of have for the system that we have moving forward is through this treaty education partnership that we're about 8 years into it. The partnership is between Mi'kmaq communities and the provincial government, is focusing on a different set of 4 key questions that everybody, all students, have the opportunity to learn under a new lens. And those 4 key questions are: who are and who were the Mi'kmaq? What are treaties and why are they important? What's happened to that treaty relationship? That's the one that we're uncovering lots and lots and lots about. It's the what happened to the relationship. And then the 4th question is, where are we going? What are we doing for a more reconciled or socially just future? And although this is an opportunity to really fill in the gaps that all students need to see and learn about, it's really about leveling the playing field. And it's perhaps, to use a different analogy, the idea that all ships, all boats rise with rising tide. But if the ship or boat is tethered with an anchor, the boat will sink as the tide rises. And I think that the drive around treaty education is so that any person or individual, particularly if you're of Indigenous ancestry, you can cut that anchor and you can rise with the tide and start closing some of those gaps. And I am really optimistic that we're headed into that area. And we've got a generation of young people now who, when they hit that grade 5, 6, 7, they're unwilling to settle with the standard answer of, well, it's just the way it was. They're asking why. And I think in the age of information access, children being able to ask why at earlier ages allows for parents and caregivers and guardians to hopefully reach out and say, let me help you find, let's find that answer together. Let's reclaim and regain some of those answers to questions that Murray Sinclair had said, and I'll leave with those and open it if there are any questions with his 4 key questions that I think could guide the ongoing transformation of public education. Where do I come from? Where am I going? Who am I? And why am I here? So I'll leave it at that. I'm looking for someone who will tell me if we have time or not.
The drummers are doing the honor song.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. I think we had, yeah.
When you deal with education, you have a lot of First Nations children living in urban areas who have that an instance where my grandson would still be with me instead of off somewhere else in a system that he knows nothing about. You know, these are things that have to be looked at through a human rights lens, right? The rights of a child. And like you, my mother was Bill C-31. My heritage is going to die with me because they won't recognize my kids or my grandchildren as First Nations people, right? I was born and raised in the city. I didn't have the privilege of being within that type of community, right? I fought all my life, and I'm fighting for my grandchildren. These are things that I think human rights needs to look at. Coinciding the education system with the healthcare system, so we don't lose more of our children through the cracks.
Just to respond to say that what you have identified as an experience, many would observe as a recolonization that is happening, and that the idea of Indian residential schools are a thing of the past. In fact, there is a perpetuation of that thinking and ideology that you're experiencing. All I can encourage is for people to keep fighting and requiring the system to be more holistic in its thinking, and that you as an individual deserve all the services and supports regardless of the department who happens to provide them. You know, that holistic nature of it shouldn't matter whose department is providing me what I need. It should matter that I get, and there's so many people on the other side who are trying so hard to get that for you, but we still live in a system that has those divisions. So thank you very much for sharing, Will Allen.
Eso te
Walaliok, thank you, Muin and the drummers from home for that powerful rendition of the honor song. And Walala and Wyatt for sharing your wisdom and shining a light on systemic discrimination in the education system. Our next speaker is Sharon Davis Murdoch, a past recipient of a Nova Scotia Human Rights Award herself. Sharon is a founding member and the co-president of the Health Association of African Canadians, or HAWC. Sharon co-managed the Association of Black Social Workers and HAWC's collaborative COVID-19 response and impact team and has received the Order of Canada in 2021 in recognition of her extensive work battling health inequity and injustice. Sharon will speak on the issue of systemic discrimination in healthcare. Thank you for being here, Sharon, and welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, you can now. I'm so pleased to be here, and I must admit I'm trying to hold it together after that amazing connection to the Spirit. So thank you. I really am pleased to have been invited to speak to you today. Unlike my colleague and friend Wyatt, I'm going to need my notes, my speech, because if I don't have one, I'm going to take you to Cape Breton and all around the province and not get to what I need to say. And in the words of a rapper who will remain nameless, I got something to say. Okay. I would like to begin this morning by affirming that we are in the decade of people of African descent. And as such, it is important to say that African Nova Scotians are a distinct founding people in our communities who have been a key part of Nova Scotia culture and history. We acknowledge that African teachings, strength, and perseverance continue to challenge and inspire our communities of African ancestry across the province. We recognize that with our Health Association of African Canadians family, we are continually working with the vision, mission, and values at our foundation for improved delivery of health care. We are likewise committed to welcoming, celebrating, and providing inclusive and clinically culturally competent care for all in our communities. Over the past 22 years, we have repeated the same points in our advocacy. We know that African-descended populations are marginalized and have poorer health than the majority of Nova Scotians and Canadians, and disadvantages when dealing with the local health system. Historically, African Canadians have been subjected to a history of trauma and harms, including enslavement, segregation, systemic anti-Black racism, discrimination, poverty, and other factors. These experiences have deeply impacted our interactions with the health system. Being subjected to everyday systemic barriers, along with the combined impact of the factors that harm our health, lead to more chronic disease. Health information about how poverty, injustice, anti-Black racism, poor education, unemployment, and other factors, also known as the social and structural determinants of health, affect marginalized groups. And that suggests that African-descended people are among those who are likely unaware of their risks for certain diseases and disorders, suffer from higher rates of chronic disease, have reduced life expectancy, access care less frequently, and feel less comfortable with the quality of care they receive than those who are well represented in the health system. Nova Scotia does not have, and has never had, information about how many people of African ancestry in Nova Scotia live with chronic diseases, including mental illness, high blood pressure, diabetes, sickle cell anemia, cancers, particularly breast, prostate, colorectal and lung cancers, heart disease, and others. We don't know how many Black people are using health programs, health centers, hospitals, or alternative health programs. We don't know how many of our people smoke, drink too much, or have other addictions. We don't know how many are overweight, live with depression, or contemplate suicide. HAWK has called for a comprehensive, system-wide health data collection that allows people to self-identify by ethnicity, race, and language in Nova Scotia and indeed across Canada. As you know, HAWK advocacy for this priority has borne fruit. Finally, governments adopted the HAWK-advised process for engaging people of African ancestry, including those whose families have been here for generations, those who have made Nova Scotia their adopted home, as well as newcomers to the province. We want to ensure that policies and programs are made to better serve our people and communities. Our health is our wealth. Collecting health data about us as a people gives us the evidence we need for better health care, services, and better health outcomes. HAWK commitment for 22 years of advocacy is for the safe, informed, effective, and culturally competent collection of health data. But HAWK will also continue to advocate for next steps that address the concerns and suggestions I just noted. We will continue to underscore the importance of the ownership, governance, interpretation, and utilization of our data with race, ethnicity, and language identifiers by and with our people. We will also continue to advocate for culturally specific care. That is care that is focused on the unique needs of a particular population. And for HAWK, that is people of African ancestry. For us, cultural competence, which means the attitudes, awareness, knowledge, skills, and policies that meet the needs of people served, includes understanding our history, our lived reality, and our cultural and clinical needs. And as Wyatt has said, and I will repeat more than once, one size will never fit all. For us, this also means understanding anti-Black racism specifically and structural racism generally. And that includes systemic and internalized racism. You see, racism is multifaceted. It is more than overt, hateful language, symbols like nooses and the N-word sprawled on walls. It is how structures have been set up, institutions, ways of hiring, how wealth has been acquired by some groups by comparison to others, media, education, and many other aspects. How those institutions behave internally and externally is where systemic racism can be found. So all this is part of our history and lived reality. And so we strive to experience equitable care, care that recognizes that one size does not fit all. It gets to the difference between treating people exactly the same, as if they all came from the same background, same privilege, and same opportunities, to treating people in ways that are just and fair. This often means that a program looks different for the different populations it serves. It is adapted to the different needs of different people. And because of that, it reduces disparities, which are bad differences, and inequities, unfair differences. And HOC is proud to have initiated examples of culturally specific care. Now well established and thriving within Nova Scotia, the Nova Scotia Brotherhood Initiative is a free program for Black men to access health care in the community to improve overall health and well-being. A team of healthcare professionals provide culturally appropriate primary medical care, plus health and wellness services for men of African descent. Its services include primary medical care, health promotion and wellness education, chronic disease management, navigation to community resources, and a variety of free health and wellness programs throughout the year. HOC also advocated for and initiated the Nova Scotia Sisterhood Initiative. Since 2017, we partnered with Nova Scotia Medical School at Dalhousie on their service learning program to facilitate its establishment. We launched the Nova Scotia Sisterhood in partnership with Nova Scotia Health and the Brotherhood in April of this year. And we have been working with dynamic leaders to implement its women-led, women-centered, transformative program and services. HOC worked with Diabetes Canada, the Department of Health and Wellness, and Medavie Blue Cross to launch the Matter of Black Health pilot project in May 2017. We built a culturally specific program aimed at preventing and managing chronic disease. Black coaches built trust and supported people to improve health and better manage disease. Diseases such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and others. Of the 165 participants paired with health coaches, 92% said they were more physically active, and 75% felt more confident navigating the healthcare system. They said they were pleased to have the opportunity to work with coaches who reflected and represented them and understood the barriers they faced as Black people. The project was discontinued, unfortunately, and we are hoping that some level of government will restore it. The African Nova Scotian Health Strategy was identified as a need in an engagement session HOC had with the then Capital Health over some 8 years ago. The strategy, written by Dr. Ingrid Waldron after extensive province-wide consultation led by my HOC co-president, Rhonda Atwell, was done. We are waiting for Nova Scotia Health to implement the many recommendations. We asked at the beginning that the first recommendation precede the others, and that was to establish the first in history African Nova Scotian Health Services consultant, and she is now in place, and as said, Rhonda Atwell is also my co-president at HOC. Before the pandemic was officially announced, HOC knew we needed a culturally specific African Nova Scotian and African Canadian response to COVID-19. So, HOC arranged community Zoom town halls on March the 20th and 27th of 2020. That was before it was even announced that there was a pandemic. And in April of 2020, and many more since and ongoing, we continue to work in community for our people with the health system to protect us against this pandemic. Back then, we needed to respond to false and dangerous internet stories about Black people being immune to COVID-19. We needed to ensure that people receive precaution messages in culturally specific and plain language ways about hand washing and social distancing, etc. HOC responded to the cultural and social realities of Black communities, like multi-generational living, tactile greeting, and affection that has kept us going despite our traumatic history, and the impact of the combined social and structural determinants of health. We formed a response and impact team with the Association of Black Social Workers, and at that point went to work together collectively, and we are still going. We needed to assure people of African ancestry that culturally competent Black health professionals were present and working in the Nova Scotia health system. HOC shared the expertise of our physician members and experts, and large numbers of people responded well to that. And indeed, we advocated hard for culturally specific vaccine clinics and have held them across the province from the time of the first vaccines to the latest boosters. Today, the Association of Black Social Workers and HOC COVID-19 Impact Plan for people of African descent in Nova Scotia has become an initiative. The next clinics are being held this week in time to protect communities prior to major holiday gatherings. Our goal is to inform, protect, and keep our people well in the face of COVID-19 and its variants that disproportionately affect us. So why is this ongoing, largely underfunded work so necessary? Let me share a few of the experiences of African Nova Scotians and Black people who have not received culturally competent care, and these came to HOC specifically. Clinically, misdiagnosis of sickle cell anemia, both in a senior and a child. HOC advocated for screening from our establishment in 2000, and that screening came about only in 2014. Lack of clinical cultural competence on how skin diseases look on Black skin and what to do for it, on which prescription drugs are most suitable or work better for our people. Endless stories of difficulty getting blood taken because providers lack the clinical cultural competence to find the vein in the beautiful hues of our skin. Too many Black men whose first experience with the mental health system is in the back seat of a police car, and criminalizing behavior that is connected to mental illness, seeing it only as a Black person or a Black man acting out or being angry or loud. In doctors' offices, not listening to people and not responding to their concerns, disrespecting and discriminating against people in ER waiting spaces and in interactions with clinicians. In long-term care, lack of knowledge about the skin and hair care of Black people, racism from other residents, and a lack of recognition of the importance of faith and spirituality in our communities. And certainly in correctional facilities, a virtual lack of culturally specific programming for Black inmates, and the ever-present lack of appropriate care, wellness products that we need, so people just go without. We have also been aware of numbers of examples of racist approaches and disrespectful behavior from clinical people when Black people are in the hospital at their most vulnerable. To address this, we are proposing the following to the Human Rights Commission, the Department of Health and Wellness, and Nova Scotia Health. I never miss an opportunity to provide policy recommendations when I have an audience, and here they are. We need a comprehensive public and system response to harms done to our people in hospital settings as a launch pad for health policy change. We need to entrench cultural and structural competency in the health system for health administrators, providers, and patients who can also, patients can also behave in racist discriminatory ways toward clinicians, as we have heard if you've been following those stories in the press. We need a clear process for complaints outside a narrow burden of proof to entrench a transparent and early and accessible process for reporting racism, discrimination, and attitudes, so patients and providers who have been harmed know who to complain to and how their complaint is going to be addressed. And at this point, I would like to address the Human Rights Commission specifically about your complaint process with respect to racist and discriminatory acts in the health system. We need speedy and robust action from you on these matters. Your comprehensive understanding of the health system is essential, and your response must be substantive and progressive. In these things, your role is unique, and we depend on you and require you to meet your role in improving complaint outcomes for racialized and marginalized people. And across systems, we need metrics about what was done and what was done about it, with regular reporting and updates that are both inward and outward facing. This is so marginalized people across their diversity, racialized people, queer and trans folks, persons with disabilities, poor people, incarcerated people, and intersections of all of those know how our health system is and will be accountable for harms done to them. So in closing, over the course of my career as a policy analyst, policy advisor, and healthcare advocate, I have seen change. I just need to see more. Thank you. I have seen a willingness to stop fighting the mere suggestion that race is a factor. Too slowly, always, but there is more understanding that structural racism affects every one of us, all of us. It is not the preoccupation of Black people, as was used against us throughout most of my career. Now it is the responsibility of the health system. Most importantly, it is shared by more Black people in positions of authority that can make this so. We need many more, though, in administration, at the Nova Scotia Health Board level, in clinical and research roles, and as health educators. As has been said, there is good policy, and there is policy that is good. We need policymakers who understand the pivotal urgency for policy that is good, policy that reduces health inequities and improves health outcomes, that gets past that one-size-fits-all thinking to a pervasive intention to do the right thing. Finally, our request to the Nova Scotia government, specifically the key leaders from the Nova Scotia Department of Health and Wellness, the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism, African Nova Scotians Affairs, and certainly the Human Rights Commission, is to ensure that we as people of African ancestry are at the table, respected and heard throughout each step of each process of health policy in this province, in this nation, and globally, particularly through Canada's role in the United Nations. Our constant refrain is, there must be nothing about us without us. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Sharon, for always pushing us to do more and better. I would now like to introduce a young poet who I understand is joining us after completing an exam this morning. Damini Awuyiga is a 15-year-old grade 10 student in Halifax. She is an activist, writer, spoken word poet, fashion designer, singer, and art illustrator. Damini is the founder of the Afro-Indigenous Book Club, a book club she created to encourage young people to read books written by Black and Indigenous authors and to share the realities and experiences of Black and Indigenous Canadians. Damini was the junior artist in residence for Wellness Within, a community organization working for reproductive justice, prison abolition, and health equity. Damini will now read her poem, There Must Be Reparations. Welcome, Damini.
So, hi, my name is Damini Awuyiga. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm recovering from a cold, so I apologize in advance. I'll be reading my spoken word poem, There Must Be Reparations. And also, thank you to the Human Rights Commission and Mr. Aletta Jebi for having me here today to perform my poem. What is the price of a life? The price of insatiable strife, Emmett Till, Trayvon Martin, and those who have departed. What is the price of a life? Stolen soul, stolen culture, to Sandra Bland, to George Floyd, and countless stolen Black lives. What is the price? What is the price? Let there be reparations. There must be atonement for every injustice suffered, and reparations for every word silenced. Give redress for the braids and froze we couldn't carry. Give solation for our bodies, styles, names, and lives. Give indemnities for our languages and diamonds stolen. Give indemnities for everything I missed. Let there be reparations in the form of opportunities and education, so we can not only write history, but make it. There must be reparations, because our backs are near broken from the baggage of these nations. This baggage that we have carried and continue to carry, now we have spoken, there must be restoration. Restoration of time to reconcile with ourselves, with our fathers and mothers, restoration of our communities, restoration of our voices, restoration of our unity, of our mental and bodily autonomy. There must be reparations. Advocacy and reparative justice and acknowledgement of our emotions in the form of space to express and address the harms that have been caused and those that have caused them. What is the price of a life? The price of insatiable strife, Emmett Till, Trayvon Martin, and those who have departed. What is the price of a life? stolen culture, to Sandra Bland, to George Floyd, and countless stolen black lives. What is the price? What is the price? Let there be reparations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Damani, for showing us all the power of young voices. At this point in our program, we're going to turn our attention toward youth and the vital care and attention that's required to ensure that young people do find their voices and that they receive the support they need to know when and how to use those voices. Two members of the Human Rights Commission team, Sam Reed, African Nova Scotian Liaison and Education Officer, and Angela Doyle Faulkner, Mi'kmaq and Indigenous Liaison and Education Officer, are among my colleagues attending the event today. These liaison roles are critical to the Commission's mandate, and connection with community is at their core. I invite all of you to learn more about their work and how to reach out to Sam and Angela by checking out the Commission's website. On behalf of the Commission, Angela and Sam launched a program for youth aged 12 to 19 this fall in partnership with the McPhee Center for Creative Learning in Dartmouth. Rhythm and Rights aims to help youth explore and understand their human rights through artistic activities, using art and songwriting to break down misconceptions and better understand self-advocacy. The program promoted understanding of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission's role and how it can be used as a resource to support well-being. We'd now like to show you a short video from this inaugural Rhythm and Rights program featuring some youth who are joining us here today.
Around town, walk around school, walk around her workspace, walk anywhere with a strut of power and confidence. Watching her walk, you'd say she knew what she wanted. She knew where she was going. She had life figured out. That she was happy with her own body. That's what confidence means, doesn't it? What real confidence means and looks like, yeah. But in a world as scary and dangerous as this, especially for a woman, false confidence is your way to safety and success. You can't read a girl based on confidence. Men like to think they can.
Freedom. Do we truly have it? Are you sure you really even want it? What would you do if you got it? Who's to say you don't have it? Who's to say you do? The important question here is, what is freedom to you?
My name's Ava, my pronouns are she, her, and human rights means to me that everybody gets what they need. I learned that human rights means that nobody can judge you by what you look like. You should be judged by who you are.
Do you feel like it's like a privilege of us in Canada that we're able to stick up for our human rights more?
and white privilege. Like I could definitely like do a lot in front of people that people of color or like I don't know anybody else probably couldn't, which sucks.
Yeah. But it's the truth.
Yeah, it's the truth.
My name is Princess. Pronouns are she, her, and what does it mean to have human rights? Well, I guess it means that you're human. Like there's different types of humans, but we all generally want the same thing, to live peacefully and happily. So having human rights is supposed to allow everyone to the ability to live a peaceful, happy life.
You got in the camera.
Wow, thank you to the participants from the first cohort of the McPhee Center's Rhythm and Rights program led by Sam and Angela. Can't wait to see this program and the youth grow together. At this point, we're going to turn our attention to the recipients of this year's Nova Scotia Human Rights Awards. And to our first group who is receiving the Youth Award. A group of students from Northumberland Regional High School in Alma, Pictou County, have traveled with family and a few members of their faculty to attend the event this morning. These youth are receiving this year's Nova Scotia Human Rights Youth Award for their work to provide free, equitable access to essential items such as food, clothing, and school supplies throughout their school community. This project is known as the Karma Closet. I would like to invite London Hamilton, grade 9, and Mallory Matlock, grade 12, to bring remarks on behalf of this amazing group of youth.
Good morning, everyone. Am I loud enough? Good? Yeah? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mallory Matlock.
I'm London Hamilton.
And we are two students from Northumberland Regional High School that volunteer with the Karma Closet.
The Karma Closet is a student-led, nonprofit organization that provides food, hygiene products, and clothing in a way that is anonymous and question-free. Our main goal as a group is to provide these essential items to any student in need. This group started as a curriculum-based Yoga 11 project in May 2019, and the project continues on a volunteer basis to present day.
We have 2 locations in our school where we give out anywhere from 40 to 90 free lunches a day. We also have a breakfast program available any morning and many locations around the school with snack bins that are available at any time to any student. In making food accessible to anyone at any time, we eliminate food insecurity. We can help more students when they don't feel singled out when they need a snack. Our program is anonymous and barrier-free. The Karma Closet has brought NRHS a welcoming atmosphere where students can get food if they need it without feeling any shame.
Our large team of volunteers work hard to provide these offerings every day. We manage a tight budget, and we have leads that apply for grants and donations to cover the costs. Some of our leads run weekly meetings, social media accounts, manage the breakfast, lunches, or free clothing drive. We have volunteers that cook the free lunches and hand them out, set out morning breakfast foods, and fill up snack bins. We also have many volunteers who organize our free clothing drive or fill up hygiene product bins. This is just scratching the surface on the different roles that our team members do every day.
Our local community has helped us to provide these essential items. We have donations from local churches, the food bank, and many more. We have many individuals in our community that like to help us out by giving donations such as cereal boxes, granola bars, hygiene products, gently used clothing, and sometimes a few extra dollars to go towards our supplies. We are extremely grateful for everyone who helps us out and makes this organization possible.
I came to Northumberland Regional High School just a few months ago as a grade 9 student. When I first heard about the Karma Closet, I instantly knew that this was my place to be. The group was very inclusive as well as empowering. I felt that I needed to be a part of this positive change in my community.
When I started helping with this organization a few years ago, I was in a similar role to London's. I helped out around the school when I could and felt empowered by doing good in my community. For the past 2 years, I've been the volunteer lead for the Karma Closet. I run the weekly meetings, organize the volunteer schedule, and try to recruit volunteers to help within our school. In my role, I try to empower my team members and help them make a change at NRHS. We have about 40 team members that help with our organization every day, and we are still growing and progressing.
Over the past 3 months, I've learned so much about how the littlest changes or actions can truly affect and help someone out. For example, we set out snack bins in every few classrooms throughout the school, and they are constantly needing to be refilled. When we see the bins needing to be refilled, it fills us with joy knowing that we have helped someone in need, and in return, that puts a smile on our faces. The Karma Closet provides a place for me to meet new people and make new friends, all while helping others in my school.
We think it is a right for students to have access to these basic necessities. Food, hygiene products, and clothing are items that students need every day. This fits it within the UN theme for Human Rights Day 2022, all human, all equal. We ensure basic human dignity. All of these acts of kindness All of these acts of kindness create a huge impact on our students daily, and I cannot wait to see where London and the many other crew members take this organization for our school community for the next few years.
Thank you, Mallory, London, and all of those involved in the Karma Closet project. I would also like to acknowledge Karen Berzowski for her support for her students and their incredible passion. Our next award recipient is one of the first journalists to be awarded a Nova Scotia Human Rights Award for their reporting work. Michael Tutton was selected to receive an individual award in recognition of his commitment to advancing dignity, equity, and justice through his reporting for over 14 years on issues including human rights violations relating to the institutionalization of persons with disabilities. Michael's reporting on these undertold stories has raised awareness of issues impacting the lives of generations of Nova Scotians. His work has turned these issues into stories about people's lives, and these stories have challenged how we do things in Nova Scotia, pushing us to disrupt the status quo in pursuit of greater equity and justice. I would like to thank Michael for his important work and invite him to say a few words. Michael?
Wow. When someone gives you something really special, the thing is to say thank you. So, first of all, thank you to the disabilities community who are here today. Can you just, if you can stand or be acknowledged or something, thank you. It is an honor to tell your stories. The lawyers that work with you, the advocates, the mums and dads, the people that love you. It is truly a wonderful thing to tell your stories. I should think this morning of the people who are working on the front lines, who had the courage to come forward and speak to me through the years. I can't even say some of their names out loud because they can get in difficulty, but you know who you are. Thank you for your courage. I should thank, of course, the people I work with in a small newsroom, which has seen layoffs and diminishment through the years. They're there doing the work so I can be with you this morning. Michael McDonald, my friend and editor of stories. Keith Doucette, who goes to the legislature and pushes. Andrew Vaughan, retiring soon. 40 years as a photographer. 40 years. My editors and my bosses, I'm grateful for the time you've given me for this stories over 15 years. And I promise I'll bring some goodies back to the office afterwards. To my wife, Kathy, who makes me a latte every morning and gently ushers me on my way for her love and compassion and her joy. To professors at the Atlantic School of Theology, in my other vocation as an Anglican minister, for teaching me that faith begins with books and such and reading, but it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't change your heart. So I thank you, my friends. To my God, to my Creator, the Redeemer and the Sanctifier, I give thanks. So the reason I'm here is because of stories. Stories focused on people with disabilities and their struggles. And when I started, I didn't know the whole backstory. Like a lot of journalists, I went plunging into the story. But the backstory is very much tied to some of the colonial stories that you've heard about already this morning. Begins with poor houses, the leftover legacy. And in 1995, sadly, I only realized later, the government of Nova Scotia had ended the program to create small options homes for people living with disabilities. And so when I came into the story in 2009, I did my first work on abuse of people with intellectual disabilities. What I was encountering was the legacy of that time. And it was a tough story to report on because it was about people being harmed. It was stories about being doused and dragged and confined in rooms. it was a difficult story to tell. And in telling that story, difficult as it was, it makes a difference. And that's why journalism is so important to human rights, because we have to tell the stories that people don't want to look at, that they maybe want to turn away from. And so the story was told, and the news conferences happen, and the politicians briefly pay attention for a little while, and the people who are doing the work, they carry on with their meetings, they carry on fighting, they're still fighting, they're still involved in law cases. Joe Fraser asked me, amidst this difficult story, what is something that inspires and keeps you going? Well, let me tell you a story. 9 years after that original story, I don't know if we have a picture of Beth. Do we have that we can put up there? We'll move from that one. That was the bad news. There. In 2018, that's Beth McLean. She and Joy Delaney and Sheila Livingston bring forward an important case. She's testifying there before the Human Rights Board, and she's saying, I should not have been in a psychiatric ward against my will for over a decade. And as a result of that, she won her case. It was a big deal. But one of the things she said that day, and I apologize for missing the story, she said, you know, the first small options home I ever saw, there was a birthday party there. And I didn't report that. I just thought, I didn't really think about that. But then if we go forward 3 years, Beth's won her case, and it's about a month and a half before she died. And I went to visit her at her small options home that she had gained. Do we have one more picture? There she is. And she's making pizza. And she said to me, Mike, I'm having a birthday party. I'm going to have my 50th birthday party. So that's why journalism should tell the stories. It should tell the stories and be inspired by the stories about people getting things that are really simple, that they deserve. They deserve a home. They deserve to be surrounded by people who love them. And they should be able to organize their own birthday party the way they want and love it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for that. Our next award is also being presented to an individual recipient who will be joining us by Zoom momentarily. Tarina Francis is receiving a Nova Scotia Human Rights Award for her work empowering individuals and communities through education and advocacy on issues of importance to Mi'kmaq culture. Tarina has been supporting Indigenous students for over 20 years. Her work began with the Bottankek Daycare, and she is now the coordinator of Indigenous Student Affairs at St. Francis Xavier University. Tarina earned her master's degree in education with a focus on culturally relevant pedagogy in 2020, and her goal is to use this education alongside the teachings that have been gifted to her by her elders and her family to change settler society's deficit narrative of Indigenous students and communities. I would now like to invite Tarina to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. I just want to thank those who nominated me for such a prestigious award. Caitlin Duff, a student at St. FX who will be graduating this spring. Carrie Prosper, elder in residence at St. FX. Megan Fogarty, Director of Human Rights and Equity. And of course, Joanne Tompkins, who is a retired professor from St. FX, Walalio. Joanne has guided and supported me along with others with this important emotional work. And I do this work because I am passionate about supporting Illinois students throughout their educational journey. If I play a part in seeing Illinois students graduate, it's all worth it. I feel honored. So Walalio. And I just wanted to thank the keynote speakers, Wyatt White and Sharon. Wyatt, I miss you, just saying. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Walal and Tarina. Our next award is named in honor of the late Burnley Allen Rocky Jones, a legendary advocate, educator, and activist for the rights of African Canadians and a champion of human rights. I would like to invite Rocky Jones' daughter, Tracy Jones Grant, to come forward to present the Burnley Allen Rocky Jones Award. This year's recipient is Carol-Ann Wright. Carol-Ann is being recognized for her leadership and commitment to social justice and economic prosperity for people of African descent. She has worked in community, and in community economic development for more than 40 years in Toronto, South Africa, Ghana, and here in Nova Scotia. Among many things, she is chair of the Social Action Committee for the African United Baptist Association, and she is a mother and a grandmother. And Carol-Ann will now introduce a short video.
Before Carol-Ann introduces her video, I just wanted to take a few minutes to say a few words because it's more than an honor for me to hand out the Burnley Rocky Jones Award every year, but this year is extremely important to me because I'm presenting it to my big sister. I am presenting it to somebody who has been a part of my life forever, who has guided me, chastised me, supported me, been there for me, but she's also been a permanent part of the social and political life that we had growing up. So Carol-Ann, they're here, and the crows said good morning.
Oh, man.
So congratulations on this award.
Wow, my knees won't stop shaking. Good morning, all. I am so humbled and honored to be presented with this award. I love and forgive all those who have conspired to put my name forward. I really do. Because they know my position on receiving individual awards for things that require collective works. And I believe that to this day, but I was told I couldn't refuse. But I wouldn't refuse because the man in whose name on this award is incredible, was an incredible mentor to me. He, along with grandparents and parents, helped me shape who I am. We're really clear at all times, this is not about you. You come as part of a collective. I want to honor those in the room. I see my family up at the top, way at the top, so I'm gonna point them out. Just wave, folks. Love my family, and my nephews and my niece are here. They are the next generation who hear the lectures in the house and, just go about their business, but I know they're listening. I've been blessed to have colleagues that are incredible in terms of human rights. I want to recognize them. I see my sister Dolly, Tamar, Shauna, Jackie, and our new counselors. You know, I am just incredibly supported. So if you're coming from me, there's a lot of people to go through, you know, so I just want to let you know that. To be able to be paid for work that you're passionate about and you love, it's not work at all. It becomes just an incredible opportunities to share. And you know, I see my stepmom over there who's drove with me today. We had to go back because I left my wallet. She's just been there. She is such a community warrior, and she has this disposition, very kind older person, but she will fight you. Like don't get in her way. They have done so, and it leads me to my Beachville community that I am so extremely proud of, who have done work over the last 5 years that I don't think even they imagined, but they have left work on the floor. They have gone and created this process and this thing that we can use an example for other communities. So I just want to, if the video is ready, to play that, because I just think that that's a testimony to work that with your passion about it and you believe as communities, and sometimes policies are oppressive, but the community presses on. So this video is about the changing of a sign in the community that took 50 years for it to happen, but it happened because community was persistent. So I want to play that video if I can. So my last few comments go to looking at that video. The thing that we're most proud of is the intergenerational leadership in that room, And as the young man mentioned, we know whose land it is. We recognize Aboriginal folks in that space as well. But we want to be good stewards, and so that's what we do. This is how we work to be good stewards, protect what we have. And Sister Sharon, incredible remarks, and the young man before you. We take these to account, particularly because folks who have experienced oppression experience what I call a soul tax. A soul tax which relates to our health, relates to how we see things, and it relates to how we work the way we do. I've been in an incredible position, given me amazing opportunities, and I owe that to my ancestors, so I accept that in their name, in my parents' name, and as Rocky's names. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol Ann, for sharing the voices in your community and really demonstrating the importance of mobilizing around issues that matter. Our next award is the Group Award. Stepping Stone is a feminist, charitable, nonprofit organization that provides support, services, and outreach to people who are currently or were formerly involved in sex work, and those who are at risk of being trafficked or identify as being trafficked. Stepping Stone supports women, men, gender diverse people, and transgender people using a rights-based and harm reduction model that aims to make sex work as safe and as positive as possible for all individuals involved. Stepping Stone's motto is rights, not rescue. It is the only registered nonprofit organization of its kind in the Maritimes, and it marked its 30th anniversary in 2019. I would like to invite Stepping Stone's Executive Director, Alex McDonnell, to accept the 2022 Nova Scotia Human Rights Group Award on behalf of this important organization. Alex.
Tough acts to follow. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex McDonnell, and I'm the Executive Director of Stepping Stone. I'm here today with Marianne Welsh, our Chair of the Board, as well as Davey Rose, our Intensive Case Manager. I'm just going to go a little bit about Stepping Stone, so bear with me a little bit. So in 1985, there were two 17-year-old females whose efforts to exit the trade were unsuccessful, and they were murdered. Those murders led to the City of Halifax to establish the Advisory Group on Prostitution and Related Issues in May of 1986. The group examined the social complexities of sex work and identified the need for an organization in the Maritimes that would deal specifically with the issues accompanying street-based sex work. In response to this need, the Elizabeth Fry Society started the Stepping Stone program in November of 1987. By 1989, Stepping Stone branched out and became its own incorporated society. Today, Stepping Stone is a user-directed, not-for-profit that supports current and former individuals involved in the sex trade by contributing to their health, safety, well-being, and advocating for basic human rights. Stepping Stone also supports those at risk of being sexually exploited, as well as survivors of human trafficking. Our program users come from all backgrounds, ethnicities, and social economic statuses. We uphold the philosophy that all individuals have the right to self-determination, as well as the right to choose what they do with their own bodies. Our desire is to ensure that those individuals have access to the tools needed to remain safe, including, but not limited to, sexual health education, violence prevention, safer sex supplies, and self-defense training. Stepping Stone is a staff of 10, and we offer a wide range of programs. The Drop-In Center, which is open Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 1. The Drop-In Center, individuals have access to programming, food, clothing bank, shower facilities, peer support, advocacy, educational and employment support, in-house visits from health practitioners and community members, workshops from addictions and mental health, and private clinicians. And I can't forget bingo, which is a huge, yeah, that's one of our major programs. Our street outreach worker provides a presence to clients on the streets Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The outreach team travels across HRM and provides supports, information, safer sex supplies, snacks, and the bad date list. The bad date list is a resource tool developed by sex workers for sex workers. This list gives sex workers a safe avenue to report bad dates to Stepping Stone, and then the dates are added to a resource so that other sex workers can be made aware of the dates to potentially avoid. COVID, I know we don't want to talk about it, but it's really when the team blew my mind. We did not close our doors during COVID. Stepping Stone quickly responded in a variety of ways to ease the impact of the pandemic on sex workers who were eligible for, who were not eligible for the emergency government benefits such as the CERB because their hours of work did not count towards. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the stigma facing sex workers on the basis of occupation was the single greatest obstacle to their economic security and human rights. The exclusion for COVID-19 assistance further pushed them into economic marginalization. Our transition support program, this comprehensive program is geared towards those individuals who want to make a transition in their life, whether that is a new career or to exit the trade. It builds upon existing skills and provides opportunities to develop new ones. The program offers support to those who have experienced trauma and abuse and also aims to develop basic skills such as computer knowledge, reading and writing, self-esteem, confidence building, resume writing, and portfolio development. We also have a court support worker. The support worker meets regularly with program users during drop-in at court and in the correctional facility. They also attend court probation meetings as well as restorative justice sessions, serving as an advocate for program users as they navigate through the justice system. Our newest position is an intensive case manager, Davey, which they do everything. Address immediate needs such as housing, food security, and advocacy, a lot recently in the medical field. Gotta take a breath, sorry, I get super excited and also nervous. On Monday, December 5th, we just opened our doors at our forever home/office at 32 Primrose. Thank you, we're super proud. The two-story building will allow Stepping Stone to expand current programs and launch new initiatives. The new location will also host the Umbrella Project, a 4-bed transition home offering a wraparound and holistic programs of supports. The new building is entirely accessible on the main level. This is the first time that 1, we've owned our own space, and 2, that the organization will operate in a space with wheelchair access. Lastly, I want to congratulate the other recipients. A special shout out to the youth. Your passion and talent has not gone unnoticed. You're definitely what the world needs. I also want to thank Eric for the nomination and the Human Rights Commission for this award. I may be the one standing before you today, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our program users, our great board of directors, and the whole Stepping Stone staff. Linda, Cass, Liz, Michaela, Joanne, Aiden, Nicole, Steph, Davey, they're all getting ready for our holiday party, so they couldn't be here today. So I just wanted to thank them as well.
Thank you, Alex, and to the many dedicated people who have contributed to the important work of Stepping Stone for more than 30 years. Your work is important and it makes a difference. So we've come a distance together this morning, but before we part ways, we will be introducing a new award, one that is perhaps a bit long coming, but one that we believe is of this time. The context for the work at the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission is built on the foundational advocacy of Nova Scotians who sought equality, fairness, justice, and greater equity and inclusion. Knowledge of those who have contributed to development and implementation of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act is crucial for the Commission and for all Nova Scotians. It's important that we know this history so that we can honor and advance the work of those who came before us. We know that our work builds directly on the work of individuals like W.P. Oliver, Donald Oliver, Gus Wedderburn, Carrie Best, and Delmore Buddy Day, and countless others. These pioneering African Nova Scotians championed human rights in their pursuit of a system that would protect the dignity of those experiencing oppression and harassment and discrimination in communities, and others whose rights were threatened based on their religion or sex or Indigenous origin. The mandate of the Commission has also been shaped by key Mi'kmaq-related human rights issues, such as the Royal Commission on the Donald Marshall Jr. Inquiry. Today, I am honored to introduce an award that will acknowledge the contributions of Mi'kmaq and Indigenous people to the Commission's mission of attaining a just, equitable, and inclusive society. Individuals and groups from Mi'kmaq communities across the region have relentlessly dedicated their efforts to this mission by protecting the culture, traditions, and ways of life of the Ohlman, championing issues of discrimination and access to justice, and promoting awareness around racial harmony and reconciliation. And these efforts warrant recognition by the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. The name of this new award, Woluwgun, is a Mi'kmaq term. My colleague, Angela Doyle Faulkner, whose passion drove implementation of this award, consulted with Mi'kmaq language knowledge sharers, including Curtis Michael, on whether there would be a phrase that would capture the essence of this award. And I think they nailed it. Woluwgun loosely translates to congratulations. You are doing extremely well and your work does not go unrecognized. I would like to present the first of two inaugural Woluwgun Awards to Elder Dr. Daniel N. Paul, who truly needs no introduction. Daniel Paul is a respected Mi'kmaq elder, author, columnist, and human rights activist whose life's work, while covering a wide range, has held steadfastly to his intrinsic belief that his Mi'kmaq culture and the history and traditions of his people were not inferior in any way to those proffered by colonialist historians. Elder Dan published We Were Not the Savages almost 30 years ago, and it is widely accepted to be the first book about our shared history written from an Indigenous perspective. The fourth edition of this groundbreaking work was published earlier this year. Awards and honors are not new to Elder Daniel Paul, and words really can't convey the immeasurable contribution he has made to all of us. Elder Dan, Woluwgun, congratulations, you are doing extremely well, and your work does not go unrecognized. Elder Dan will now say a few words by Zoom from his home in Indian Brook. Welcome, Elder Dan.
Hello. Okay. Hello. I'm not pressing the right button, I guess. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, there, I can see myself. Okay. I'm going to read a bit and then I'll say a few words. But first, I would like to say I regret not being able to join you folks at the event today, but serious health issues have made such inadvisable. First and foremost, I wish to thank the Commission for creating the Woluwgun Award. My fondest hope is that it will inspire more of our people to become more active in promoting our human and civil rights. You have my appreciation for giving me the honor of being the first recipient. It has been a long struggle for the Mi'kmaq and Mi'kmaqi to obtain a place of recognition in Nova Scotian society, and we still have a long ways to go. However, we have made many progressive strides in the last 40 years or so, and most of this has come to reality by the process of educating the public about the Indigenous history of the Americas and, of course, the history of the Mi'kmaq. Intolerance in this province when I was born in 1938 was overt and widely practiced. Race, color, religion, sexual preference, etc. could see a person excluded and debased. And in 1938, 84 years ago, when I was born, we were not allowed in pool rooms. We could not buy liquor and have a pint of beer internally or externally. We did not have the right to vote. We were wards of the state. We had the same status as insane persons and drunks. And that's only 84 years ago. 1951, they amended the Indian Act after the proclamation of the Human Rights, Proclamation of Human Rights in, I believe, 1948. Canada had to begin to, I guess, correct some of its apartheid policies, and one of these was that. They removed some of them, but believe it or not, we still couldn't vote until 1961. We were not allowed to go into liquor stores until 1985 legally, and it was widely enforced, the provisions of the act at that time. And then, of course, came the most horrible instance of all in the 1990s, and that was the wrongful conviction of Junior Marshall. The poor boy spent 11 years in a federal penitentiary for something he didn't do. And to my mind, that's the man who stood behind it, who actually was responsible for it, John McIntyre, received no negative consequences whatsoever. As a matter of fact, he later became police chief of Sydney and was honored by his colleagues. Junior's story was one of many over the years. In 1980s, I decided I was going to do something about it. And in that regard, I decided I was going to write a history of the Mi'kmaq and include, of course, other Indigenous nations across the Americas in it to some extent, and reveal the true history. And I always remember getting a call from a law school in Ontario, the Dean of Law, and her telling me after she read the first edition of We Were Not the Savages. And this was simply what she said: I'd like you to listen to my education background. And she listed a prestigious amount of education that she had. And she was a professor of 2 PhDs, English and in law. And she said, I want you to know until I read your book, I never heard a word about such things as scalp proclamations. And that is the hidden history of this province and the hidden history of Canada. It took a lot of courage. I wanted known that in 1967, when the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act was created, we were not included in it at that point in time. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until 1991 when Premier Donald Cameron included us, and also at that point in time, sexual orientation. So we are making giant steps going forward, and Nova Scotia has become, since the publishing of my book, a more enjoyable place for our people. We now have an MP elected to Parliament, a senator, and other things, and hopefully we stay that way and we continue along the path we're on. And in conclusion, I'd like to say my fondest hope for the future is that this province will become a role model for tolerance of the differences of others around the world. Well, all and may you all have a great day. Thank you.
Walal and Elder Dan Walal. In future years, the Commission will seek nominations for recipients of the annual Woluwin Award from community members, just like we do as the process for other awards. But in its inaugural year, we wanted to ensure its introduction and that the chosen recipients really embody the spirit of the award and the intentions behind it. And for this reason, we will be presenting the Woluwin Award not only to an individual, but also to a group. The Grandmother Water Protectors are a grassroots, purpose-oriented group composed at its core of Mi'kmaq women, encompassing members who are difficult to count and impossible to describe without words like dedication, devotion, essential, peaceful, and fearless. Despite intimidation, coercion, and criminalization by governments, companies, and communities, these Mi'kmaq grandmothers hold strong to Indigenous self-determination and the concept and practice of caring for Insinogama, all my relations. Through knowledge and strategy, they have been grassroots leaders for Indigenous women's rights and for ecological justice. To the past, the present, and the future Grandmother Water Protectors, we honor you today with the Woluwin Award in recognition for your selfless commitment to Ndugalam, the protection of our water, our environment, and for the well-being of future generations. I would like to invite Elder Doreen Bernard to speak on behalf of the Grandmother Water Protectors. Welcome, Elder Doreen.
So I accept that on behalf of everyone that helped us to do the work that we do today. Queening Delawasi, Gazadam Dandal Illinois, Gilnick Clan, Sabaganagadi, and Mi'kmaqi. Well, I'll yet to the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission to develop this prestigious, beautiful Indigenous Human Rights Award, Woluwin, that celebrates the human rights champions and acknowledges the work they do every day from the heart, from the spirit, to stand together to protect the sacred, our Mother Earth, our water, for all our Nogama, all our relations in all creation. This award is special in that it honors Indigenous cultural values and the work and dedication of all the people who help to protect our lands and our waters and make a difference for all life in Mi'kmaqi, now and for the future generations to come. First, in our traditions, we give our greatest gratitude to Gisug, our creator, and our Nugamich, and our Niskamich, our ancestors, and our spirit helpers, those who have gone on before us, for watching over us and helping us to guide us. This is a spiritual movement to protect our Mother Earth and the water for all our Nogama, our relations, our human family, the animals, the flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the plants, the trees, the rocks, all that enable us to live today. We all need clean water to drink. We all need clean air to breathe, clean food from the lands, and the resources to survive. We all want a better life, a better world, and a good life for our children and grandchildren and our future generations. The life and culture and strength of Indigenous peoples cannot be separated from the sacredness of water. We embrace our connections to the Mother Earth. and to the lifeblood. And encourage all to remember that water is precious, and every living being needs clean water to survive. Water must be defended at all costs. Water is life. Everyone should have the basic human rights to clean water and food and shelter. In our culture, all living beings should have this too. We are interconnected and interdependent and have a purpose while we are here on Mother Earth. This is everyone's responsibility. We give our sincere gratitude for the knowledge that we have gained from ancestral memory and the lived experience of historic trauma of colonization, the residential schools, genocide, and day schools, the 60s scoop, child welfare system, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and the continued resistance of environmental racism and oppression and the infringement of Mi'kmaq treaty rights, the impacts on our human rights, on our families, our communities, and our nation. We continue to do the work on reconciliation, restitution, and reclamation, and we need everyone to succeed in this important work. We give our sincere gratitude to the Indigenous and non-Indigenous, those grassroots grandmothers, grandfathers, the elders, the youth, water protectors, treaty defenders, water walkers, our cultural teachers, ceremony leaders, mentors, the academics, scientists, the NGOs, government leaders, provincial, federal, and Mi'kmaq leaders, community organizers, the lawyers and researchers, and all our allies and supporters, those movers and shakers. We see you. We know who you are. You know who you are, where you stand, and we hold you in our hearts, and will continue to support you. We remember and honor our elders and warriors who have passed on, for their wisdom and courage and strength that carried us through challenging times. We remember the ones that stand today. We honor all those who show up and stand up and put their bodies on the front lines and sacrifice their time away from their families, risk their lives, and even time in the legal system, and all who support wherever they are, whenever they are needed. We see you. Many are here today. Please stand up with me as we acknowledge you. Those who come. Stand up, stand up. Okay. There are so many more, some that we don't even know, that work behind the scenes, that have given their time and their energies, their support, their prayers, their ideas, the labor, planning and organizing, communications, fundraising, putting their words into actions for the good of humanity and of all our relations. You know who you are. This award is for you too. Remember that we couldn't do this work. for Mother Earth and the water and all our relations, our Nogama, without each and every one of you. I accept the Wellaguna Award on behalf of everyone that has helped in every way to do this work. Our late elder and mentor, Grandmother Josephine Mandaminba, had dedicated her life and teachings to the Medewan Lodge and shared the teachings of the sacredness of water and our responsibility to protect. She walked around the Great Lakes and Turtle Island, praying for the water and our Mother Earth, teaching about this is our life. This is what we understand, that water is life. We continue to teach others about who we are, our shared history, our shared responsibility, and our connection to the land and the water and all life. This is our humanity. I want to say a special thank you to all those who continue to work tirelessly in environment, human rights, all the things that the grandmothers have been working on over the years. There is change. Like you say, more change is needed. And I think everyone that works on those front lines, because I know it isn't easy, that you continue to persevere and you continue to give everything you have to that work, because it is making a difference for our people here in Mi'kma'ki. Have a beautiful winter season and holiday. Take that time to rest and relax, rejuvenate, gather and celebrate. Plan your good work and count your blessings. To all the other awards that were given today, we honor you, we see you, we thank you. Elder Dan, so yes, my heart. I'm so, give so much thanks to him for carrying us through, raising our people up in what he does to talk about our history that was never taught. We have a lot of catching up to do. And I'm thankful that the education system is letting us to bring that forward in the schools. May 2023 be the year to make good trouble. The positive change to our actions to protect our Mother Earth and the water and all life. Wala aliak. Msut nogama. That heart.
So we're just going to finish up with the Strong Woman song in honor of all of our beautiful Olnu and Indigenous women and non-Indigenous women as a whole.
So I'm just going to explain a little bit about that song that we just sang. And this song was developed in the prison systems for the women, with the Indigenous women. And then they started to notice that every couple of days there would be a missing voice because they would call out to each other. So the women devised this song as a way to check up on each other, to check up on their voices, to make sure that they were still there. So one woman would start, and then the next would go until everyone was accounted for, or they knew who was not there when one woman's voice was not there. So we sing this song to honor our women, to recognize that even though they are not with us, their voices will always be heard. I want to say congratulations to all of the recipients today. What beautiful stories, what beautiful tenacity, and the strength and courage for each and every one of you to move on and do the things that you do for not only your communities, but for human beings here on Mother Earth. We are all the same, no matter what color our skin, no matter where we come from. We are all special, and we are all the same, and we all deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. So I would like to close our gathering today with a closing prayer. I invite everyone to stand and to pray in your own way. Ani buju nanatemakus and dejanakas no manganaway, anishnabe kwe bachawana. Creator, we are blessed by you who connect all being. We are blessed by you, Sun, you give us light and strength. We are blessed by you, Moon, who teach us the importance of reflection. We are blessed by you, land and water, your circulation supports our living. As we are blessed, we bless others. As we are loved, we love others. As we are healed, we heal others. As we are related to you, we are related to one another. Help us all now, sing to us all now, repair us all now. Creator, bring peace to all our souls. Emset Nogama, all my relations.